What's up, people? Today, I will be reviewing one of my favorite films of all time, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. And I have that coming up for you next. Terminator 2 Judgment Day was a movie that came out in 1991, and it was directed by James Cameron, and it starred the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, and Edward Furlong. And right off the top, people, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. I remember watching this for the first time as a kid, maybe a little bit after 1991, but still, and just being enthralled by it. And it was the most energizing film that I saw in the 90s, really, just because I loved the action in this movie and how tense it was. And it actually got me into Arnold. And he was, and still, for the most part, is one of my favorite movie stars of all time. I love his, 80s work along with some of the early 90s stuff. But, this was the movie that really got me into Arnold. And unfortunately, this is also the movie that Arnold will never beat. I will just say right off the top, this is as good as Arnold will ever get. And he will never quite reach these heights, but at the same point in time, work for the rest of his career to try to emulate this. And you might be asking, why am I reviewing Terminator 2 right now? Well, that is because they actually just released it in 4K, and they had a new master that was supervised by James Cameron, and I will be reviewing that for you guys right after this video. But how is the movie itself 27 years after its release? It is still as awesome as it ever was, people. This movie rocks! Not only did this solidify Arnold Schwarzenegger as a mega star, but this actually brought Linda Hamilton back into the limelight, at least for a short period of time, and really gave her more credibility than she ever had. And that is because in this movie, she is hot. And she really worked out for this. When you watch Terminator and then watch Terminator 2, it looks like a full body transformation here. And that is very evident when she actually cocks an entire shotgun by herself. Yeah. That was a real shotgun that she is able to cock by herself, one-handed, and that is something that she trained for and she wanted to do. And Arnold, what more can I say about the guy? This is, like I said, as good as he will ever get. He's funny. This is largely the start of funny action Arnold. They really did experiment with making Arnold a lot more of a likable character other than the first Terminator. In that first Terminator, let's not forget, people, he was the bad guy. And now, since he's the good guy, he's going to get a lot of jokes with Edward Furlong. And, I think for this movie, it works, but at the same point in time, it's the one thing about this movie that I'm not too sure of, just because for the later movies, and I mean almost all of his later movies, they will look back on this and say, hey, Arnold can do action and be funny. And they just did it again and again and again. And the plot here is very simple, and that is that Judgment Day has still not been stopped, and Sarah Connor and John Connor were working to actually stop Judgment Day after that first film. But what had happened is Sarah Connor got captured and is now in a mental institution, and John went up pretty much for adoption, and now he's with his adopted parents. But all of this will change because a Terminator has been sent back to kill John Connor because he will be the leader of the Resistance in the future. And that Terminator is Robert Patrick's T-1000, maybe one of the best villains of all time. And he rarely gets even a line in here. So John Connor sent back the same Terminator that was out to get him in the 80s to 1991 to stop the T-1000, and that would be Arnold. And that might seem like a retread of the first Terminator, and that might seem like a simple premise, but it is what they do with that premise and how much this feels like Terminator 2.0 that really makes this movie what it is, because this is one of the best action movies of all time. All of the action in this movie is incredible, and that is because Arnold is at the top of his game, and this T-1000 is so damn cool. This is the first time that we actually saw CGI and really thought that it was the future. The things that they do with the T-1000 and his liquid metal in this movie still holds up to this day. When he becomes like part of the floor and pops up and surprises you, or when he's running from them in the insane asylum and he sticks his arms like swords into the door so it doesn't fully close, and then he makes them like hooks so it opens up the door. That is badass, and that is something that still hasn't been replicated today. Every scene with the T-1000 feels so well thought out that it wasn't just, hey, this will look cool. It was, hey, this will look cool, and we have thought this out to the greatest potential. And every action scene in this movie amps itself up to the point where you actually get the best action scene at the end of this movie just because of what they actually do with the T-1000. They do some really cool stuff here, especially when Arnold throws him into a wall and then he's like face first, and then he kind of melds himself so he actually spins himself around so he's actually facing Arnold. That is an awesome choice, and it's something so small, but yet they did it, and it means so much. And this will also be the best that Arnold looks with his action. Arnold was definitely on the decline as far as his muscle mass goes. You know, in the 80s, this guy was ripped. And even when you look at the first Terminator and then come to this one, you notice a substantial difference. And that will only happen more and more in time. But I feel like this is the last movie that he actually feels like a credible threat for his foes just because of, you know, how he looks. Because Arnold, he'll go downhill after this. Let's just put it that way. They have definitely created a post-apocalyptic future that I feel like is really striking, with striking imagery, and it creates some dread that really makes you fear for these characters' future. And I feel like that is a lot more effective in this movie than in the previous movies. My one knock against Terminator 2, though, is Edward Furlong. He was really young in this movie, and it shows because at some point in time his voice cracks. He was definitely hitting that point in his, you know, teenage years, and I just don't really like some of his quips. Hasta la vista, baby. I don't like that when he says it. I like it when Arnold says it, just because Arnold is like a pro at turning a negative into a positive, and that's something that he has always managed to do throughout his career. But Edward Furlong does not have that ability, and for that, I really don't like Edward Furlong in this movie, and that only gets amplified with time. But hey, guys, hey, Terminator 2 Judgment Day is still a classic movie that everybody, I feel like, has watched, and if you haven't, should watch. It is so close, so close to being the actual perfect movie in my mind. And that is why I have to give Terminator 2 Judgment Day the first 10 out of 10 that a movie has ever gotten, and I feel like it couldn't have happened to a better movie. So next, people, I do have to get into the new 4K Blu-ray that just came out last week, and we will definitely have a discussion about that because a lot of people don't like it. But do I like it? Subscribe so you know when that video comes out, because that is definitely going to be a big discussion. And as always, guys, thank you for watching my videos. You guys are great, and I will see all of you next time.